The drama surrounding the tallest basketball players in history has always captured the imagination of fans. But few stories are as perplexing, as controversial, and as quietly tragic as that of Abidon Adyok, the Nigerian giant who briefly convinced the world that he might be the future of basketball. In an era where players like Edey and Victor Wembanyama dominate headlines for pushing the boundaries of height and skill at 7'4", and where the tallest man to ever step foot in the NBA, Gheorghe Mureșan, stood at 7'7", the appearance of someone nearly 8 feet tall was enough to send shockwaves through the sport. Yet this is not just a story about a man's physical frame. It is about deception, misplaced ambition, systemic failure, and the painful reality that sometimes being extraordinary is a burden rather than a blessing. At first, the story seemed almost unbelievable. A man nearly 8 feet tall, moving on a basketball court, palming a ball with just 2 fingers, casually dunking without even leaving the ground. He called himself Big Niga, though his real name was Abidon Adyok. When Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most recognizable basketball figures on the planet, posted a clip of him in 2021, the internet erupted. To see Shaq, himself a mountain of a man, reduced to looking like a child in comparison to this towering figure was enough to make people believe they were witnessing something unprecedented. Overnight, social media labeled him the 7-Eleven prodigy, a viral sensation whose size seemed to guarantee a place in the NBA. But that hype would quickly unravel. The intrigue only deepened when fans searched for answers. Who was he? Where did he come from? If someone that tall existed, surely scouts, journalists, and analysts must have written about him. But the trail was cold. No biography, no Wikipedia entry, no newspaper clippings, no statistical records. The only real footage came from a youth league in Dubai, the NPAC Youth Basketball League, where he was seen dominating competition with sheer size. The problem? That league was designed for players 14 years old and under. If true, that meant there was a teenager not yet in high school who stood nearly 8 feet tall. The possibility was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a physical anomaly that could change basketball forever. But almost immediately, cracks began to show. The idea that he was only 14 years old didn't sit right with many observers. Scouts, coaches, and fans alike began to wonder how a figure so large, so conspicuous, had somehow slipped entirely under the radar of global basketball scouting networks. Nigeria has a long history of producing athletic talent, particularly in basketball, with figures like Hakeem Olajuwon becoming legends of the game. For someone of Abidon's stature to have gone unnoticed seemed improbable. As the speculation grew, so too did whispers of a darker truth, that his age had been fabricated, that what people were seeing was not a miracle teenager, but a grown man disguised as a youth prospect. This was not an unfamiliar story in global sports. Age fraud, especially in regions where birth certificates and official documents are not tightly regulated, has long been a problem. In countries across Africa, Asia, and even Latin America, young athletes are sometimes advised by agents to lie about their age in order to maximize their chances of being recruited to top programs. In basketball, accusations have followed names like Serge Ibaka, Thon Maker, and others. By shaving years off their real age, players could extend their eligibility in youth tournaments or appear more promising to professional scouts. In Abidon's case, the evidence increasingly pointed toward such a deception. Old acquaintances began to surface, pointing out that they remembered him from years earlier, already towering over other men and already playing organized basketball in Nigeria and South Sudan. If he truly was 14 in 2021, then he would have been only 10 or 11 during those earlier years, which seemed biologically implausible given his height and maturity. A Nigerian news article from 2016 even described him as a 17-year-old approaching adulthood. If accurate, this would mean that in 2021, at the height of his viral fame, he was not a teenager at all, but a man in his early 20s. That revelation alone destroyed much of the mystique that had built up around him. The truth, however, is that Abidon's story is more complicated than a simple lie about age. He grew up in poverty, his towering body as much a curse as it was a gift. His family could not afford proper shoes, and finding a size 53 was nearly impossible anyway. His height made daily life difficult. He could not stand upright in his own home, which forced him into a hunchback posture that still defines his silhouette today. Opportunities in Nigeria were scarce, and though he was eventually introduced to basketball through chance encounters with coaches and mentors, he lacked the infrastructure, training, and development that are critical for raw prospects. Unlike Taco Fall, who was identified early and brought to the United States for specialized training, or Olivier Rioux, the Canadian giant groomed through elite North American prep schools, Abidon had no such support system. By the time international attention found him, it was already too late. He had spent his formative years in obscurity, playing barefoot in low-level competitions, while his contemporaries in America and Europe trained like professionals from adolescence. The plan, it seems, was desperate and flawed, and by reintroducing him as a 14-year-old in Dubai, agents may have hoped to reset the clock, to give him the illusion of youth so that programs in the United States would take him on as a long-term project. But the gamble backfired. His face was too recognizable, his frame too distinct, his past too well known to disappear. When scouts and journalists pieced together the truth, interest evaporated. By 21 or 22, as confirmed by those who knew him, he was already too old to play high school or college basketball in America. Without credentials, without competition against credible opponents, and without the polish that comes from years of professional coaching, he had no realistic path to the NBA. And so, despite being the tallest basketball player in the world, Abidon found himself unwanted. The NBA would not touch him. Colleges passed him by. Even professional leagues overseas showed no interest, perhaps wary of the baggage, perhaps concerned about the physical strain such an extreme body might face in real competition. In the years since, as of 2025, he remains an amateur, his appearances limited to social media clips of him dunking in empty gyms or casually shooting jumpers in front of a camera. The in-game footage, the true test of a player's skill and endurance, is conspicuously absent, suggesting that the myth of Big Niga has always been more spectacle than substance. That absence tells its own story. At 7'11", his body seems ill-equipped for the rigors of competitive basketball. The hunchback posture, the awkward gait, the sheer difficulty of carrying so much height on a human frame, all of it suggests limitations that no amount of coaching could erase. In truth, he may have been too tall for basketball, his size crossing the line from advantageous to debilitating. Where players like Wembanyama and Yao Ming balanced height with mobility, Abidon's extraordinary dimensions left him vulnerable, unable to perform at a professional level. What makes his tale compelling is not what he achieved, but how close he came to fooling the basketball world into believing he was something more than a curiosity. For a brief moment, he was a viral sensation, a mythical figure whose future seemed limitless. But as the truth unraveled, so too did the illusion. Today, he is remembered less as a prospect and more as a cautionary tale, a reminder that not all extraordinary bodies are built for extraordinary success. And yet, even in his failure, the fascination remains. The human imagination is captivated by extremes, by the possibility of someone standing nearly 8 feet, tall and dominating the court. That curiosity ensures that clips of Abidon will continue to circulate, that stories will continue to be told, that his name will linger on the edges of basketball's folklore. In that sense, though he never played professionally, he has already left a mark, one built not on statistics or championships, but on myth and speculation. So the next time we see towering figures like Olivier Rioux or the latest 7-foot prodigy, we should remember the story of Abidon Adyok. Because behind the viral videos and internet headlines lies a sobering truth. Height alone is not enough. Without the right training, without the right support, and without honesty in the system, even the most extraordinary bodies can be left behind. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Abidon was ever capable of playing at the highest levels? Or was he always destined to remain a social media spectacle? Do you believe his story could have turned out differently if he had been discovered earlier? Or was he truly too tall to ever succeed in the NBA? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of basketball's strangest mysteries, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more in-depth stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next one.